Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the bird's eye view. As you can see, I'm flying solo today. Uh, but so most of you know me. That I was in the military. I like my guns. I live in a state that has open carry laws, and so you know, I joined the military, defended people's rights. And what really burns me about most of everything that's going on is always trying to take people's rights away. It seems like right now the Democrats, that's all they're for. That's all they can do is just try to take people's rights. And so when I saw this new headline, it kind of burned me up a little bit. And so the California governor, I think is who he is, Newsom says he will use the Texas abortion law tactic to restrict assault weapons. So, and then this was mirrored by New York, especially after the Buffalo shooting. And so what basically what happened in Texas is they created, okay, so this goes back to this whole Roe versus Wade thing, but we're not going to get into that. If Texas has the right to, if the states have the right to restrict or outlaw abortions, what they're also doing, like in Texas, is saying if you participate in any way to help somebody get an abortion that violates their law or restriction, then that person can be sued by another individual that has nothing to do with that case. So Joe Blow neighbor knows Jane Doe over here is pregnant, and her friend comes over and picks her up, and they go somewhere, and then she comes back and she's not pregnant. And nosy neighbor over here says, "Oh, she just had an abortion." He can bring a lawsuit against her, against the friend that drove her, against the doctor, and anybody else involved for $10,000 per lawsuit, per offense. And then that neighbor could sue all those people and do the same thing. So now what they're trying to do, because the abortion, one way or the other, it's whether you feel it's the right of a woman to choose or it's not. That debate is for something else. But what it's not is it's not explicitly in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say you have the right to an abortion, or any of the amendments, where the Second Amendment gives you the right to own a firearm, to have that firearm, and to use that firearm if necessary to defend yourself. It says that, not word for word, but it says that in the Second Amendment, which gives you that inherent right as an individual living in this country. Now, what Californians are trying to do, and now Texas is as Californians and now New York is trying to do, is they're trying to use that same instance, that same framing of the law, to make you a criminal. Even though you didn't actually commit any crimes, but so let's just say that your buddy and you, no, that's not. Let's say you're an Uber driver, and you go and pick this guy up, and he's got weapons, okay, and whatever, you drive him to the shooting range, And then he walks over and he starts killing a whole bunch of people. Not even at the shooting range. He walks across the street to the grocery store and starts shooting a bunch of people. Now, you're just an Uber driver, but now you may be liable and sued for $10,000 per person that decides they want to sue you. It could be a whole number of people. Could be the person that saw you pick them up. Could be a parent or loved one of a victim or something like that. But now you are liable for up to 10 grand per lawsuit, even though you had nothing to do with the actual crime. What they're trying to do is use this against the gun manufacturers and saying, hey, this gun was sold, everything was legal about the sale, but that person used that gun and committed a heinous act, but now you're liable for $10,000 per person that decides they want to sue you, whether they were involved in this or not. Like whether they had, if they're related to a victim, know a victim, they don't have to be any of that. They just have to decide they want to do a personal lawsuit on you. $10,000 per offense or per lawsuit is the cap. Now, the reason this is such a problem is because private citizens are the ones doing the lawsuits. The federal law protecting manufacturers doesn't apply here. And that's how they're circumventing the law to fight against your Second Amendment rights. Okay? Now, here's the thing, is how can you create a law that basically goes against your ability to exercise a right given to you by an amendment or the Constitution? Think about that for a second. I'm not talking about just gun laws. How can a state create a law that dictates how you can exercise your fundamental right with the Constitution or amendment? Okay, now, instead of being a gun right, now it's freedom of speech. Because any argument you use against the Second Amendment, I can turn around and use that same argument against freedom of speech. And I'll guarantee you, more people have died from people talking than by somebody owning a gun or getting a gun illegally. And if you think that's wrong, then just look up what the little mustache guy did in World War II and how many people he killed by just using word. Because remember, he wasn't the one pulling the trigger. All he was using is his words. Right? How many people have died in this country just by using their words? Look at some of these cult serial killers. They're not the ones that actually committed any of the murders, but they sure talked it. Right? So, any argument you use against the Second Amendment, I can turn around and use against the First Amendment. And I'm not the only one. Because let's just go ahead and look at this. The New York governor, right? Within hours of the Buffalo shooting, the governor of New York began calling for the infringements upon personal liberties. First, she argued that social media platforms were somehow liable for these killings, since they provided a platform which the killer could reinforce hatreds on which they could manifest. Then she attacks the First Amendment. She argued that hate speech and incendiary speech should be prosecuted. Finally, she attacks the Supreme Court because they have... So here's where this gets a little dicey, is she's talking about removing your Second Amendment rights. She's talking about removing your First Amendment rights. Well, there you go. They both use the exact same argument. So now you're removing your liberties, right? I mean, here's the thing, is you have to be very careful how you use these arguments, because they can be turned around and used against you. If you want to remove people's Second Amendment rights, then they might just want to remove your ability of free speech. And how is that going to treat you? How would that fundamentally change this country that was built on having guns and built on freedom of speech? This country would not be here right now if it wasn't for the personal ownership of firearms and the personal ability to have your own freedom of speech. This country would not exist at all, period. Because we would have lost this. We would have lost, for one, we would have never had the ability to fight the redcoats. And we would have never, this country would have never been formed. And then how would the Civil War have changed? Because you think about it, those were farmers fighting farmers. People fighting people. There was a lot of other things going on where people had their own weapons and were fighting. So here's the thing is you can't regulate hate. And you know what? There's a great video I want to show you from Mr. Colin Noir, who's a gun rights advocate, but just listen to what he has to say.
There's a lot of disconnect with respect to reality. You make all the laws you want, it doesn't matter, because people who are dead set on killing people are going to get what they need to do it. In 2016, a man in...
Okay, that's the first of the 2 points that he makes is he's exactly right. Is people are going to get whatever they want to commit the crime that they want to commit. It doesn't matter if they follow the gun laws or not. They're going to get whatever they need. In fact, the criminal that is going to go and do criminal activities, breaking the laws, doesn't care about the laws. They don't. Because they're criminals. That's just the thing. And so all you do is prevent yourself from being able to act. Okay, never mind. Here we go again.
In Nice, France, got a truck and killed 81 people with the truck. You want to guess what stopped him? People with guns.
There. So you don't even need a gun to kill a whole bunch of people. In France, that guy just drove a truck. In Europe, they deal with stabbings all the time because they don't have so much access to guns. People just get stabbed. People that are going to commit heinous crimes like murder are going to do it with whatever they have available. And if you just take away the guns, they're going to use the knife. You take away the knife, they're going to use a hammer. Take away the hammer, they're going to use a rock. Take away the rock, they're going to use their bare hand. They're just those people that are going to do that stuff. You cannot regulate hate, and that's the real problem. You can't stop these people from doing what they're doing. But people can stop these people from doing what they're doing. That's the whole point. Is if everybody's armed, how are you going to go in there and start shooting or hold up a store if you know everybody's armed? Right? Like, all right, let's listen to more Colin here for a second.
So he speaks the absolute truth. You can't do anything if in the moment you don't have what you need to protect yourself. Take the security guard, for instance. That particular security guard was...
Okay, hold on. What he's talking about is the Buffalo shooting, right?
Because after the security guard got shot, he got a gun shooting people still.
Okay, so after the security guard got shot, the guy was still shooting people. But the security guard had a gun and returned fire.
If more people were armed and knew what they were doing with a gun, because it's not the gun, it's the person with the gun that don't know how to act. It's not the gun, it's the person with the gun that don't know how to act.
Now, the other part of that is you, Colin's about to say here is, I'll just let him finish this out and then we'll move on.
That clip isn't exactly easy to find. And I want you to ask yourself this question. If Mr. Lewis had gotten up on there and said something to the...
All right. So basically what he's about to say is that You can't find that clip anywhere. None of the news articles are showing that clip. Why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. If like he was about to say, if he said, "Oh, this wouldn't happen unless if people didn't have access to guns," that clip would be everywhere. But that clip that you just watched, that he's stating that if more people had guns, they would have been able to stop it faster or whatever. Then that's the clip you can't watch. But this. Let's not get lost in this here. Like, what's really going on here is the Democrats are trying to take your rights away from you. And as a veteran, that burns me up because I serve to protect people's rights and defend those rights. That burns me up inside. Anytime I hear that they're trying to move your right, and it's all about control. It's all about control. Now they want to remove your rights for guns. After they do that, they're going for your freedom of speech. And then what will you have? You can't talk about it, and you can't fight back. Sound like a tyrannical government? Could be. But my point of this is you need to wake up. You need to speak out, and you need to look and see who you're electing. And if those electors, those people that you're trying to elect, are taking away your rights, you need to vote the other way and protect those rights. Because once they can remove one right, the rest of them are free game. And then without our rights, without the Constitution, without those amendments, well, you might as well go live in China or Korea. So if you like your rights, if you like freedom of speech, then you probably better like the Second Amendment. And you better start protecting those rights with the way you vote. But with that, we're out of here for now. Much love all.